Hello and welcome. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with a Handforth Parish Council meeting that went viral. Joining me today is Jackie Weaver, who's the Chief Officer of the Cheshire Association of Local Councils. Miss Weaver was at the centre of a social media storm after remaining calm on a Zoom call, which had insults, laughter, and members being kicked out. Jackie, a very warm welcome to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad you call me Jackie. Good heavens, Miss Weaver at least adds 10 years.
So I can imagine you've been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks, well, days and so.
Well, of course, we're running into 2 weeks now. And yes, I mean, something that I thought was possibly going to run for the weekend and make the most of it has continued for 2 weeks. And
it has, and it's still going in today's news. One of the top news items was the follow-up meeting to that initial December the 10th meeting that everybody's now very familiar with.
Yeah. It
It
isn't actually the follow-up meeting to it.
There was one on the 21st, wasn't there, of January?
They have had the previous meeting that was called. I think there was relatively little business done at the meeting. It was a fairly short one, but it's not actually the first one.
Right.
Been aware of.
Yeah, and the number of attendees for last night's meeting was quite high, since there's a huge interest in it. So for the very few people who've been sleeping under a rock that don't know who you are, can you tell us who you are and your role?
Well, I'm Jackie Weaver, and I'm the, you did introduce me very nicely, I'm the Chief Officer of the Cheshire Association of Local Councils. And what I do normally is it's kind of like troubleshooting for town and parish councils. We have 234 of them in Cheshire, the wider Cheshire. But most of our work is quite sedate, really. It's mainly about providing general information, guidance, support and training to those parishes.
Okay, and on the December the 10th meeting, there was obviously a need for you to be there. What led for you to have to host that meeting?
Well, this had gone on for some time before the 10th, of course, and unfortunately, the chairman had unilaterally suspended the clerk. And the clerk is the person that, like you saw last night, usually takes the meeting. And that meant that the meeting had no officer.
So so there was an issue with the clerk.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, it meant that we now had the chairman who had declared himself also to be clerk, which meant if you wanted to hold a meeting, the remaining councillors asked the clerk, he wouldn't call a meeting, asked the chairman, he wouldn't call a meeting. So 2 councillors called a meeting, but of course it meant that they had no administrative support for the meeting. They asked the association if we would provide some administrative support, but knowing there were difficulties at Handforth, I felt the right thing to do was go myself rather than send somebody else in. And that was why I was there that night.
And Brian, at the chair, Brian Tolver, was adamant that you had no authority. Was that true?
I don't believe so, but the problem is with parish council legislation is that a lot of it is not tested case law. But I think there's a couple of things to bear in mind. One of them being that it was not the chairman's or the clerk's meeting. The meeting was called by 2 councillors. And at that point, although the chairman appeared, he did not have any authority, in that meeting. It was not the chairman's meeting.
And, according to Councillor Smith, Councillor Tolver was asked to you put him into the waiting room rather than kicking him out.
Absolutely.
Is that the case? He argues that you kicked him out.
It's absolutely the case, and no question about that. And not only that, but before even that happened, I muted him, I think 3 times, and asked him if he would please proceed with the agenda. So at that point, we were offering him every courtesy in the role as chairman, but he insisted on disrupting the meeting. His point was to make a statement and close the meeting down.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's why I wouldn't let him make the statement.
Have you spoken to the chairman, Brian Tolver, since that incident?
I don't think Councillor Tolver has much to say to me. I'm afraid that he's still very much of the view that he was badly treated that evening.
Do you intend to reach out to him at some point, or that's an issue is closed and you've moved on?
It is difficult to move on from it on account of every half hour somebody reminds me of it. In terms of moving on emotionally from it, I mean, I feel no hostility to Councillor Tolver at all. In fact, having watched the meeting that took place last night, I guess that my main concern was that, you know, I felt that clearly Councillor Tolver was struggling with that meeting. And he did in fact make reference a couple of times to being very tired. And clearly the meeting did seem to tax him more than we would hope that a meeting would tax somebody trying to do business. And so, you know, I guess what I would do is reach out to him and ask, or even give permission, if he needs permission, to hand the reins over, and not feel that that is something that is a failing. You know, I think we all have a role to play in local government. I'm not a councillor. I don't want to be a councillor. My role is there to support. But, you know, it may be, and it's for Councillor Tolver to decide himself, but it may be time for him to consider his own well-being.
I mean, that was raised yesterday. Apologies of the noise again.
I feel better now, Amos.
Working from home.
Yeah.
The grass cutters have decided to come, and ambulances and you name it. It was raised in the meeting yesterday that Councillor Tolver should consider his position. He did avoid that question. And at one point, when he was asked in reference to the December 10th meeting, in reference to yourself again, he did walk away at one point. So that has raised a lot of questions. And he did seem tired yesterday. I mean, it did go on for 3 hours, eventually finished at 10 o'clock. So you can imagine it is tiring. But would you certainly say that he definitely needs to consider his position now, and it's just now for somebody else to take over that position? And who would you put forward?
Well, again, it's not for me to interfere in their democracy, basically. But what I would say to any councillor is that you do have to look after yourself, and that, you know, public service is about giving what you can give, not about giving everything. So, you know, if it...
Yeah, I mean, there was a discussion...
If you have reached a point in your career where it is...
Yeah.
If you reached a point in your career where it is a challenge for you, then in that sense, perhaps you need to consider not your position, but your own needs.
Yeah. I mean, it was raised a couple of times when he did say again, you know, he felt fatigued. It was almost a full-time role for himself. The other councillors stepped in and said that they have full-time jobs and they're still able to do that. So again, you know, there's lots of arguments with that issue. I just wanted to ask you, going back again to that infamous date, December the 10th, in the midst of that pressure, how did you remain calm? You seem to be a very holistic type of person. You know, you've spoken just briefly now about why it's important to look after yourself and your health and so on. How did you stay calm in that pressure?
Well, I think first of all, it wasn't a surprise. Well, it was a surprise, the passion of it, but the fact that it was going to be a difficult meeting wasn't a surprise. And for me, it was about being clear on what it is you're trying to do. And I was clear that what I was trying to do that night was make a meeting happen for the two councillors that had requested it. And that was my focus, and everything else was noise.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was quite a lot of noise.
It was. It was. I mean, especially with the shouting, you know, it's quite easy for anyone to lose their temper, but, you know, you remain calm. This, you know, even with the deputy chair, that, you know, he didn't turn up yesterday. That's another issue that's being raised. But yeah, you know, it's there was a lot of noise, and you did remain calm. You mentioned you were focused on the issue at hand, but do you think being a very calm person helped as well, just in your personality?
I think I am generally a fairly calm person. I do find it quite challenging to be hyper. Occasionally things will make me feel like that, but I try, you know, to be calm. And it's part of the job I've done for 25 years. I mean, when somebody rings me up with a problem, they don't want to hear about my problems. What they want is calm reassurance that the world will still turn.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of when I'm at work. And I was working that night. That's my approach. Keep calm.
Keep calm and carry on.
Let others carry on.
Yeah. Did you expect it to go viral?
How could anybody have expected that? It didn't happen it didn't happen that night, that week, that month. It happened so much later that, of course, in large part, business had rolled on since then. So.
And at what point did you realise, wait, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Did you get a call from one of the other councillors, or did you spot yourself on telly?
No, the first thing that happened was the night before it all kicked off, or as it was kicking off, somebody sent me a screenshot that said that I was trending #3 in the UK or in the world. I can't remember which. I have absolutely no idea what that means. I mean, literally, I have no idea. So I thought, I'll send it to my son. So I forwarded it on to my son and got no reply. So I thought, oh, fine, it's, you know, nothing to even think about. And then the following morning, my phone was completely blocked because I have it on silent overnight. My email was full, my messages were full, there were reporters outside, there was camera vans, the lot. And my son rings my husband on his phone because he can't get through on mine to say, I didn't realise that she meant it. I thought she sent the wrong thing. So, reporters on the lawn in the morning is a clue that something big has happened.
Yeah.
Either that has caught you because you've murdered somebody.
But do you realise you've got your own emojis now on social media?
I did see one,
Yeah.
but I'm very lucky. Twitter have been in touch and they're going to offer me some support in learning how to use it. So watch this space and, you know, see me on wherever Twitter appears. I'll be there shortly.
All right, I'll be following you. I'll be looking out for you. So yeah, you've got your own emojis on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, all over the place. You are still trending worldwide, so it's incredible. I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, how important is local politics?
Well, I mean, in that sense, and I'd call it local government rather than local politics. For me, I'd call it local government. Hugely important. I've just spent more than a quarter of my life involved in it. not quite half. That would just be the wrong thing to say, but quite a lot. 25 years involved in it. I think it's hugely important, and it's one of the reasons why I've kind of rolled with this. A lot of people say, why did I open the door and say yes? And, you know, my answer is, why wouldn't I? Because I've been able to talk to people like yourself, Amos, about town and parish councils, about increasing diversity, about encouraging young people to get involved in their local councils, about encouraging people who live in parish areas to get involved with their local councils. And Jackie Weaver, prior to the 10th of December, could not have reached such an audience. Why wouldn't I open the door?
It's incredible. And you never even tried, did you? But, you know, you've made, you know, parish council, local governance a thing. And, you know, just looking at the audience yesterday as well, there were so many young people that were so intrigued. Over 3,000 views.
Yeah, there were, but again, a lot of people I kind of felt were there for the entertainment. And, you know, it's okay to have some fun with me. But ultimately, they were trying to work through an agenda with greater or lesser, you know, success. So not everybody was there for interest in local government. I get that. But on the back of this, a lot of people are tuning into their local councils. Maybe they're hoping to see the same thing as Handforth. They will be disappointed. But what they will see is what is actually happening on their patch. And, you know, that I hope is something that stays with them and makes them want to get more involved. And that, you know, would mean that this fortnight, however long it lasts for, has really been worth doing.
Most definitely agree with you there. And hopefully, part of the agenda yesterday was the 1:30 bus route. Hopefully they get that sorted out as well. Really important. I'm actually nearby to Handforth, so it's in my interest as well. That's
Amos, I think that's a really important point, because, you know, I couldn't give a fig about that bus service. I don't live in Handforth. But to people who do live in Handforth, that is a really important discussion. And I think that's sometimes why, you know, if you have reporters that go to council meetings, etc., they find them dull. I get that. But when it's your bus service, it is not dull.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, you know, local politics or local governance, again, is, you know, arguably more important than some of the national stuff. I mean, these are the things that happen on your doorstep and it affects you directly. Some national policies, you know, don't really come to your doorstep, but that's why, again, it's so important. I think leading up to, you know, these May elections, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more people interested, even though it's going to be tricky voting during the pandemic. But yes, there's going to be more interest.
But your point is well made, Amos, but I think it's also about the fact that so rarely do we feel we can influence central government policy. But you sure as heck can influence what's happening in your own communities. Can I just give a plug for what's happening with the National Association of Local Councils? That's NALC. On their website, that's nalc.gov.uk. And there you'll see the Make a Change campaign. And that really tells you how to get involved. So check that out.
Yeah, so can you give us that website again?
Yeah, it's nalc, NALC.gov.uk.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. So what do you enjoy most about what you do?
It's kind of like a tale of two halves. It is certainly huge fun meeting people that I have always kind of admired, like Anton de Beck. But equally, I feel honoured to have been asked to be the keynote speaker at the National Union of Students annual conference.
Fantastic.
So there's kind of like the personal bit and also the work bit. And you know, there are real wins I feel that I've had in both, which has been fantastic.
It seems to me you've got a speaking career now as well, which is
Bless you. I think by the time this has run its course, the last thing people will want to do is hear more from me.
You'd be surprised it's still going. You wouldn't have thought that. You thought it was going to last for 24 hours. Here we are.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
what career tips would you offer to someone that wants to do what you're doing? What would you say?
Well, I guess the first thing is decide what kind of involvement you want to have in local democracy or politics. So, you know, as I said, I am not a councillor. I was a councillor for a period of about 3 years on a very small parish council, and I realised it wasn't for me. My preference is to be involved as an officer, so I guess kind of like a quasi-civil servant, behind the scenes, making things work for the people that make the decisions. That's what I enjoy doing. But, you know, without councillors, there's no need for people like me.
Yeah, but you're still important, Jackie. We still need you. So we know that you've got a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of interviews that you're still doing. You're still on the news headlines. You know, again today, you know, some of the top stories feature Handforth Parish Council. What are your plans for the future?
Ultimately, I will go back to the job that I've known and loved. I'm still doing that in the background. Apologies to anybody who hasn't had a reply fast enough. I'm usually very good at replying in the day job. But go back to that and hope that as a result of my 15 minutes of fame, we actually have renewed interest in the town and parish council movement.
Wow. Jackie, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking the time in your very busy schedule to come and sit down and talk to us. What an incredible joy this has been for me. I've really been looking forward to this. You know, attending yesterday's parish council meeting, I just kept on thinking about our interview today and hotly anticipating what might come next. But it's been an absolute joy. And I just want to say thank you for being you, Jackie Weaver. You know, you will be celebrated forever. Keep doing what you do. And sometimes you just don't realize what ends up trending. You know, clearly you just chaired a meeting that day, hosted a meeting, sorry, and here we are today. So we don't know, anything can happen.
I think that is a terrific note to finish on, Amos. Thank you.